Book 12, Part 2 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by David Lipa. The Aeneid, by Virgil. Translated by John Dryden. Book 12, The Fortunes of War, Part 2. As the black swallows near the palace plies, o'er empty courts and under arches flies, now hawks aloft, now skims along the flood, to furnish her loquacious nest with food, so drives the rapid goddess over the plains. The smoking horses run with loosened reins, she steers a various course among the foes, now here, now there, her conqu'ring brother shows, now with a straight, now with a wheeling flight, she turns and bends, but shuns the single fight. Aeneas, fired with fury, breaks the crowd, and seeks his foe, and calls by name aloud. He runs within a narrower ring, and tries to stop the chariot, but the chariot flies. If he but gain a glimpse, Juturna fears, and far away the Daunian hero bears. What should he do? Nor arts nor arms avail, and various cares in vain his mind assail. The great Messapus thund'ring through the field, in his left hand 2 pointed jav'lins held. Encount'ring on the prince, one dart he drew, and with unerring aim and utmost vigour threw. Aeneas saw it come, and stooping low, beneath his buckler shunn'd the threat'ning blow. The weapon hiss'd above his head, and tore the wavering plume which on his helm he wore. Forced by this hostile act, and fir'd with spite, that flying Turnus still declined the fight. The prince, whose piety had long repell'd his inborn ardour, now invades the field, invokes the powers of violated peace, their rites and injur'd altars to redress, then to his rage abandoning the rein, with blood and slaughter'd bodies fills the plain. What god can tell, what numbers can display the various labours of that fatal day? What chiefs and champions fell on either side, in combat slain, or by what deaths they died, whom Turnus, whom the Trojan hero kill'd, who shar'd the fame and fortune of the field? Jove, couldst thou view, and not avert thy sight, 2 jarring nations join'd in cruel fight, whom leagues of lasting love so shortly shall unite? Aeneas first Rutulian Sucro found, whose valour made the Trojans quit the ground. Betwixt his ribs the jav'lin drove, so just, it reach'd his heart, nor needs a second thrust. Now Turnus at 2 blows 2 brethren slew. First from his horse fierce Amycus he threw, then leaping on the ground, on foot assail'd Diores, and in equal fight prevail'd. Their lifeless trunks he leaves upon the place, their heads distilling gore his chariot grace. 3 cold on earth the Trojan hero threw, whom without respite at one charge he threw. Cethegus, Tanius, Tagus fell oppress'd, and sad Onythes added to the rest, of Theban blood, whom Peridia bore. Turnus 2 brothers from the Lycian shore, and from Apollo's fane to battle sent, overthrew, nor Phoebus could their fate prevent. Peaceful Menothes after these he kill'd, who long had shunn'd the dangers of the field. On Lerna's lake a silent life he led, and with his nets and angle earned his bread. Nor pompous cares nor palaces he knew, but wisely from the infectious world withdrew. Poor was his house, his father's painful hand discharged his rent, and plow'd another's land. As flames along the lofty woods are thrown, on different sides, and both by winds are blown, the laurels crackle in the sputtering fire, the frightened sylvans from their shades retire. Or as 2 neighbouring torrents fall from the sky, rapid they run, the foamy waters fry. They roll'd to the sea with unresisted force, and down the rocks precipitate their course. Not with less rage the rival heroes take their different ways, nor less destruction make. With spears afar, with swords at hand they strike, and zeal of slaughter fires their souls alike. Like them, their dauntless men maintain the field, and hearts are pierced, unknowing how to yield. They blow for blow return, and wound for wound, and heaps of bodies raise the level ground. Murranus, boasting of his blood, that springs from a long royal race of Latian kings, is by the Trojan from his chariot thrown, crush'd with the weight of an unwieldy stone. Betwixt the wheels he fell; the wheels that bore his living load his dying body tore. His starting steeds, to shun the glitt'ring sword, paw'd down his trampled limbs, forgetful of their lord. Fierce Hyllus threaten'd high, and face to face affronted Turnus in the middle space. The prince encounter'd him in full career, and at his temples aim'd the deadly spear. So fatally the flying weapon sped, that thro' his helmet pierc'd his head. Nor Arcesius could escape from Turnus' hand, in vain the strongest of the Arcadian band. Nor to Capentus could his gods afford, availing against th' Aenean sword, which to his naked heart pursued the course. Nor could his plated shield sustain the force. Iolaus fell, whom not the Grecian pow'rs, nor great subverter of the Trojan tow'rs, were doom'd to kill, while heav'n prolong'd his date. But who can pass the bounds prefix'd by fate? In high Lyrnessus and in Troy he held 2 palaces, and was from each expell'd. Of all the mighty man, that last remains, a little spot of foreign earth contains. And now both hosts their broken troops unite in equal ranks, and mix in mortal fight. Seresthus and undaunted Mnestheus join the Trojan, Tuscan, and Arcadian line. Sea-born Messapus with Atenius heads the Latin squadrons, and to battle leads. They strike, they push, they throng the scanty space, resolv'd on death, impatient of disgrace; and where one falls, another fills his place. The Cyprian goddess now inspires her son to leave th' unfinish'd fight, and storm the town. For while he rolls his eyes around the plain in quest of Turnus, whom he seeks in vain, he views th' unguarded city from afar, in careless quiet and secure of war. Occasion offers, and excites his mind to dare beyond the task he first design'd. Resolv'd, he calls his chiefs; they leave the fight. Attended thus, he takes a neighb'ring height. The crowding troops about their general stand, all under arms, and wait his high command. Then thus the lofty prince: "Hear and obey, ye Trojan bands, without the least delay. Jove is with us, and what I have decreed requires our utmost vigor and our speed. Your instant arms against the town prepare, the source of mischief and the seat of war. This day the Latian tow'rs that mate the sky shall level with the plain in ashes lie. The people shall be slaves, unless in their time they kneel for pardon and repent their crime. Twice have our foes been vanquish'd on the plain. Then shall I wait till Turnus will be slain? Your force against the perjur'd city bend; there it began, and there the war shall end. The peace profaned our rightful arms requires. Cleanse the polluted place with purging fires." He finish'd, and one soul inspiring all, form'd in a wedge, the foot approach'd the wall. Without the town, an unprovided train of gaping, gazing citizens are slain. Some firebrands, others scaling ladders bear, and those they toss aloft, and these they rear. The flames now launch'd, the feather'd arrows fly, and clouds of missive arms obscure the sky. Advancing to the front, the hero stands, and stretching out to heav'n his pious hands, attests the gods, asserts his innocence, upbraids with breach of faith th' Ausonian prince, declares the royal honor doubly stain'd, and twice the rites of holy peace profaned. Dissenting clamors in the town arise; each will be heard, and all at once advise. One part for peace, one for war contends. Some would exclude their foes, and some admit their friends. The helpless king is hurried in the throng, and, whatever the tide prevails, is borne along. Thus, when the swain within a hollow rock invades the bees with suffocating smoke, they run around, or labor on their wings, disus'd to flight, and shoot their sleepy stings. To shun the bitter fumes in vain they try; black vapors issuing from the vent involve the sky. But fate and envious fortune now prepare To plunge the Latins in the last despair. The queen, who saw the foes invade the town, And brands on top of burning houses thrown, Casts round her eyes, distracted with her fear. No troops of Turnus in the field appear. Once more she stares abroad, but still in vain, And then concludes the royal youth is slain. Mad with her anguish, impotent to bear The mighty grief, she loathes the vital air. She calls herself the cause of all this ill, And owns the dire effects of her ungovern'd will. She raves against the gods, she beats her breast, She tears with both her hands her purple vest. Then round a beam a running noose she tied, And fasten'd by the neck, obscenely died. Soon as the fatal news by fame was blown, And to her dames and to her daughter known, The sad Lavinia rends her yellow hair And rosy cheeks; the rest her sorrows share. With shrieks the palace rings, and madness of despair. The spreading rumour fills the public place. Confusion, fear, distraction, and disgrace, And silent shame are seen in every face. Latinus tears his garments as he goes, Both for his public and his private woes. With filth his venerable beard besmears, And sordid dust deforms his silver hairs. And much he blames the softness of his mind, Obnoxious to the charms of womankind, And soon seduced to change what he so well design'd, To break the solemn league so long desir'd, Nor finish what his fates and those of Troy requir'd. Now Turnus rolls aloof o'er empty plains, And here and there some struggling foes he gleans. His flying coursers please him less and less, Asham'd of easy fight and cheap success. Thus half contented, anxious in his mind, The distant cries come driving in the wind. Shouts from the walls, but shouts and murmurs drown'd, A jarring mixture and a boding sound. Alas, said he, what mean these dismal cries? What doleful clamours from the town arise? Confused he stops, and backward pulls the reins. She who the driver's office now sustains, Replies: Neglect, my lord, these new alarms. Here fight, and urge the fortune of your arms. There want not others to defend the wall. If by your rival's hand th' Italians fall, So shall your fatal sword his friends oppress, And honour equal in success. To this the prince: O sister, for I knew the peace infring'd proceeded first from you. I knew you when you mingled first in fight, And now in vain you would deceive my sight. Why, goddess, this unprofitable care? Who sent you down from heav'n, involv'd in air, Your share of mortal sorrows to sustain, And see your brother bleeding on the plain? For to what pow'r can Turnus have recourse, Or how resist his fate's prevailing force? These eyes beheld Murranus bite the ground. Mighty the man, and mighty was the wound. I heard my dearest friend with dying breath My name invoking to revenge his death. Brave Ufens fell, with honour on the place, To shun the shameful sight of my disgrace. On earth supine, a manly corpse he lies, His vest and armour are the victor's prize. Then shall I see Laurentum in a flame, Which only wanted to complete my shame. How will the Latins hoot their champion's flight! How Drances will insult and point them to the sight! Is death so hard to bear, ye gods below? Since those above so small compassion show, Receive a soul unsullied yet with shame, Which not belies my great forefather's name. He said, and while he spoke with flying speed Came sages urging on his foamy steed. Fix'd on his wounded face a shaft he bore, And seeking Turnus sent his voice before. Turnus, on you alone depends our last relief. Compassionate your friends. Like lightning fierce Aeneas rolling on, With arms and vests, with flames invades the town. The brands are tossed on high, the winds conspire To drive along the deluge of the fire. All eyes are fix'd on you, your foes rejoice. Even the king staggers and suspends his choice. Doubts to deliver or defend the town, Whom to reject, or whom to call his son. The queen, on whom your utmost hopes were placed, herself suborning death, has breathed her last. 'Tis true, Messapus, fearless of his fate, with fierce Atinas' aid defends the gate. On ev'ry side surrounded by the foe, the more they kill, the greater numbers grow. An iron harvest mounts, and still remains to mow. You, far aloof from your forsaken bands, your rolling chariot drive over empty. Stupid he sate, his eyes on death declin'd, and various cares revolving in his mind, rage boiling from the bottom of his heart, and sorrow mix'd with shame his soul oppress'd, and conscious worth lay labouring in his thought, and love by jealousy to madness wrought. By slow degrees his reason drove away the mists of passion, and resumed her sway. Then rising on his car, he turn'd his look, and saw the town involved in fire and smoke. A wooden tower, with flames already blazed, which his own hands on beams and rafters raised, and bridges laid above to join the space, and wheels below to roll from place to place. Sister, the fates have vanquish'd, let us go the way which heav'n and my hard fortune show. The fight is fix'd, nor shall the branded name of a base coward blot your brother's fame. Death is my choice, but suffer me to try my force, and vent my rage before I die, he said, and, leaping down without delay, through crowds of scatter'd foes he freed his way. Striding he passed, impetuous as the wind, and left the grieving goddess far behind. As when a fragment from a mountain torn by raging tempests, or by torrents borne, or sapped by time, or loosed from the roots, prone through the void the rocky ruin shoots, rolling from crag to crag, from steep to steep, down sink at once the shepherds and their sheep. Involved alike they rush to nether ground, stunn'd with the shock they fall, and stunn'd from earth rebound. So Turnus, hasting headlong into town, should'ring and shoving, bore the squadrons down. Still pressing onwards to the wall he drew, where shafts and spears and darts promiscuous flew, and sanguine streams the slippery ground embrue. First stretching out his arm in sign of peace, he cries aloud to make the combat cease. Rutulians, hold, and Latin troops retire. The fight is mine, and me the gods require. 'Tis just that I should vindicate alone the broken truce, or for the breach atone. This day shall free from wars the Ausonian state, or finish my misfortunes in my fate. Both armies from their bloody work desist, and bearing backwards form a spacious list. The Trojan hero, who receiv'd from fame the welcome sound, and heard the champion's name, soon leaves the taken works and mounted walls. Greedy of war, where the greater glory calls, he springs to fight, exulting in his force. His jointed armor rattles in the course. Like Eryx, or like Athos, great he shows, or Father Apennine, when, white with snows, his head divine obscure in clouds he hides, and shakes the sounding forest on his sides. The nations, overawed, surcease the fight. Immovable their bodies, fix'd their sight. Even death stands still, nor from above they throw their darts, nor drive their batt'ring rams below. In silent order either army stands, and drop their swords unknowing from their hands. The Ausonian king beholds, with wond'ring sight, two mighty champions match'd in single fight, born under climes remote, and brought by fate with swords to try their titles to the state. Now, in closed field, each other from afar they view, and rushing on, begin the war. They launch their spears, then hand to hand they meet. The trembling soil resounds beneath their feet. Their bucklers clash, their blows descend from high, and flakes of fire from their hard helmets fly. Courage conspires with chance, and both engage With equal fortunes yet in mutual rage. As when two bulls for their fair female fight In Scylla's shades, or on Tabernus' height. With horns adverse they meet, the keeper flies, Mute stands the herd, their heifers roll their eyes, and wait the event which victor they shall bear, and who shall be the lord to rule the lusty year. With rage of love the jealous rivals burn, and push for push, and wound for wound return. Their dewlaps gor'd, their sides are lav'd in blood. Loud cries and roaring sounds rebellow through the wood. Such was the combat in the listed ground, so clash'd their swords, and so their shields resound. Jove sets the beam. In either scale he lays the champion's fate, and each exactly weighs. On this side life and lucky chance ascends, loaded with death that other scale descends. Rais'd on the stretch, young Turnus aims a blow, full on the helm of his unguarded foe. Shrill shouts and clamors ring on either side, as hopes and fears their panting hearts divide. But all in pieces flies the traitor sword, and in the middle stroke deserts his lord. Now is but death or flight disarm'd he flies, when in his hand an unknown hilt he spies. Fame says that Turnus, when his steeds he join'd hurrying to war, disorder'd in his mind, snatch'd the first weapon which his haste could find. 'Twas not the fated sword his father bore, but that his charioteer Metiscus wore. This, while the Trojans fled, the toughness held, but vain against the great Vulcanian shield. The mortal temper'd steel deceiv'd his hand, the shiver'd fragments shone amid the sand. Surpris'd with fear, he fled along the field, and now forthright, and now in orbits wheel'd. For here the Trojan troops the lists surround, and there the pass is closed with pools and marshy ground. Aeneas hastens, though with heavier pace; his wound, so newly knit, retards the chase, and oft his trembling knees their aid refuse. Yet pressing foot by foot, his foe pursues. Thus, when a fearful stag is clos'd around with crimson toils, or in a river found, high on the bank the deep-mouthed hound appears, still opening, following still. Wherever he steers, the persecuted creature to and fro turns here and there to 'scape his Umbrian foe. Steep is the ascent, and if he gains the land, the purple death is pitch'd along the strand. His eager foe, determined to the chase, stretch'd at his length, gains ground at every pace. Now to his balmy head he makes his way, and now he holds, or thinks he holds, his prey. Just at the pitch the stag springs out with fear. He bites the wind, and fills his sounding jaws with air. The rocks, the lakes, the meadows ring with cries. The mortal tumult mounts, and thunders in the skies. Thus flies the Daunian prince, and flying blames his tardy troops, calling by their names, demands his trusty sword. The Trojan threats the realm with ruin, and their ancient seats to lay in ashes, if they dare supply with arms or aid his vanquish'd enemy. Thus menacing, he still pursues the course with vigor, though diminish'd of his force. 10 times already the listed place one chief had fled, and the other given chase. No trivial prize is played, for on the life or death of Turnus now depends the strife. Within the space an olive tree had stood, a sacred shade, a venerable wood, for vows to Faunus paid, the Latins' guardian god. Here hung the vests, and tablets were engraved of sinking mariners from shipwreck saved. With heedless hands the Trojans fell'd the tree, to make the ground enclosed for combat free. Deep in the root, whether by fate or chance, or erring haste, the Trojan drove his lance, then stoop'd and tugg'd with force immense to free the encumber'd spear from the tenacious tree. That whom his fainting limbs pursued in vain, his flying weapon might from far attain. Confus'd with fear, bereft of human aid, then Turnus to the gods, and first to Faunus pray'd. O Faunus, pity! And thou, Mother Earth, where I, thy foster son, receiv'd my birth, hold fast the steel. If my religious hand your plant has honour'd, which your foes profaned, propitious hear my prayers, he said, nor with successless vows invoke their aid. The incumbent hero wrench'd, and pull'd, and strain'd, but still the stubborn earth the steel detained. Juturna took her time, and, while in vain he strove, assum'd Meticus' form again, and in that imitated shape restor'd the despairing prince his Daunian sword. The Queen of Love, who, with disdain and grief, saw the bold nymph afford this prompt relief, to assert her offspring with a greater deed, from the tough root of the ling'ring weapon freed. Once more erect, the rival chiefs advance; one trusts the sword, the other the pointed lance, and both resolv'd alike to try their fatal chance. Meantime imperial Jove to Juno speak, who from a shining cloud beheld the shock: "What new arrest, O Queen of Heav'n, is sent to stop the Fates now lab'ring in th' event? What farther hopes are left thee to pursue? Divine Aeneas (and thou knows it too) foredoom'd to these celestial seats are due. What more attempts for Turnus can be made, That thus thou linger'st in this lonely shade? Is it becoming of the due respect And awful honour of a god elect, A wound unworthy of our state to feel, Patient of human hands and earthly steel? Or seems it just, the sister should restore A second sword, when one was lost before, And arm a conquer'd wretch against his conqueror? For what, without thy knowledge and avow, Nay more, thy dictate, durst Juturna do? At last, in deference to my love, forbear To lodge within thy soul this anxious care; Reclin'd upon my breast, thy grief unload. Who should relieve the goddess, but the god? Now all things to their utmost issue tend, Push'd by the Fates to their appointed, while leave was given thee, and a lawful hour For vengeance, wrath, and unresisted pow'r. Toss'd on the seas, thou couldst thy foes distress, And, driv'n ashore, with hostile arms oppress, Deform the royal house, and from the side Of the just bridegroom tear the plighted bride. Now cease, at my command, the Thund'rer said, And with dejected eyes this answer Juno made: "Because your dread decree too well I knew, From Turnus and from earth unwilling I withdrew. Else should you not behold me here alone, Involv'd in empty clouds, my friends bemoan, But girt with vengeful flames, in open sight, Engag'd against my foes in mortal fight. 'Tis true, Juturna mingled in the strife, By my command, to save her brother's life, At least to try; but, by the Stygian lake (The most religious oath the gods can take), With this restriction, not to bend the bow, Or toss the spear, or trembling dart to throw. And now, resign'd to your superior might, And tir'd with fruitless toils, I loathe the fight. This let me beg, and this no fates withstand, Both for myself and for your father's land: That when the nuptial bed shall bind the peace, Which I, since you ordain, consent to bless, The laws of either nation be the same, But let the Latins still retain their name; Speak the same language which they spoke before, Wear the same habits which their grandsires wore; Call them not Trojans; perish the renown And name of Troy, with that detested town; Latium be Latium still; let Alba reign, And Rome's immortal majesty remain." Then thus the founder of mankind replies: Unruffled was his front, serene his eyes: "Can Saturn's issue, and heav'n's other heir, Such endless anger in her bosom bear? Be mistress, and your full desires obtain; But quench the choler you foment in vain. From ancient blood th' Ausonian people sprung, Shall keep their name, their habit, and their tongue. The Trojans to their customs shall be tied; I will myself their common rites provide. The natives shall command, the foreigners subside; All shall be Latium, Troy without a name, And her lost sons forget from whence they came. From blood so mix'd a pious race shall flow, Equal to gods, excelling all below. No nation more respect to you shall pay, Or greater off'rings on your altars lay." Juno consents, well pleas'd that her desires Had found success, and from the cloud retires. The peace thus made, the Thund'rer next prepares To force the watery goddess from the wars. Deep in the dismal regions void of light, 3 daughters at a birth were born to night. These their brown mother, brooding on her care, endued with windy wings to flit in air, with serpents girt alike, and crown'd with hissing hair. In heav'n the Dirae call'd, and still at hand, before the throne of angry Jove they stand, his ministers of wrath, and ready still the minds of mortal men with fears to fill, whenever the moody sire, to wreak his hate on realms or towns deserving of their fate, hurls down diseases, death, and deadly care, and terrifies the guilty world with war. One sister plague, if these from heav'n he sent, to fright Juturna with a dire portent, the pest comes whirling down. By far more slow springs the swift arrow from the Parthian bow, or Sidon yew, when traversing the skies, and drench'd in poisonous juice, the sure destruction flies. With such a sudden and unseen a flight, shot thro' the clouds the daughter of the night, soon as the field inclos'd she had in view, and from afar her destin'd quarry knew, contracted, to the boding bird she turns, which haunts the ruin'd piles and hallow'd urns, and beats about the tombs with nightly wings, where songs obscene on sepulchres she sings. Thus lessen'd in her form, with frightful cries, the Fury round unhappy Turnus flies, flaps on his shield, and flutters o'er his eyes. A lazy chillness crept along his blood, chok'd was his voice, his hair with horror stood. Juturna from afar beheld her fly, and knew the ill omen by her screaming cry, and stridor of her wings. Amazed with fear, her beauteous breast she beat, and rent her flowing hair. Ah me, she cries, in this unequal strife, what can thy sister more to save thy life? Weak as I am, can I, alas, contend in arms with that inexorable fiend? Now I quit the field. Forbear to fright my tender soul, ye baleful birds of night. The lashing of your wings I know too well, the sounding flight, and funeral screams of hell. These are the gifts you bring from haughty Jove, the worthy recompense of my ravish'd love. Did he for this exempt my life from fate? O hard conditions of immortal state! Though born to death, not privileg'd to die, but forced to bear imposed eternity. Take back your envious bribes, and let me go, companion to my brother's ghost below. The joys are vanish'd, nothing now remains of life immortal, but immortal pains. What earth will open her devouring womb, to rest a weary goddess in the tomb? She drew a length of sighs, nor more she said, but in her azure mantle wrapp'd her head, then plunged into her stream with a deep despair, and her last sobs came bubbling up in air. Now stern Aeneas his weighty spear against his foe, and thus upbraids his fear: "What farther subterfuge can Turnus find? What empty hopes are harbor'd in his mind? 'Tis not thy swiftness can secure thy flight, Nor with their feet, but hands, the valiant fight. Vary thy shape in thousand forms, and dare what skill and courage can attempt in war. Wish for the wings of winds to mount the sky, or hid within the hollow earth to lie." The champion shook his head, and made this short reply: "No threats of thine my manly mind can move; 'Tis hostile heav'n I dread, and partial Jove." He said no more, but with a sigh repress'd the mighty sorrow in his swelling breast. Then, as he roll'd his troubled eyes around, an antique stone he saw, the common bound of neighb'ring fields, and barrier of the ground, so vast, that 12 strong men of modern days the enormous weight from earth could hardly raise. He heav'd it at a lift, and, pois'd on high, ran stagg'ring on his enemy, but so disorder'd that he scarcely knew his way, or what unwieldy weight he threw. His knocking knees are bent beneath the load, and shiv'ring cold congeals his vital blood. The stone drops from his arms, and, falling short for want of vigour, mocks his vain effort. And, as when a heavy sleep has clos'd the sight, the sickly fancy labours in the night, We seem to run, and, destitute of force, our sinking limbs forsake us in the course. In vain we heave for breath, in vain we cry, the nerves unbraced their usual strength deny, and on the tongue the faltering accents die. So Turnus fared. Whatever means he tried, all force of arms and points of art employ'd, the Fury flew athwart, and made the endeavour void. 1,000 various thoughts his soul confound. He started about, nor aid nor issue found. His own men stop the pass, and his own walls surround. Once more he pauses, and looks out again, and seeks the goddess charioteer in vain. Trembling he views the thundering chief advance, and brandishing aloft the deadly lance. Amazed he cowers beneath the conqu'ring foe, forgets to ward, and waits the coming blow. Astonish'd while he stands, and fix'd with fear, aim'd at his shield, he sees th' impending spear. The hero measur'd first, with narrow view, the destin'd mark, and rising as he threw, with its full swing the fatal weapon flew. Not with less rage the rattling thunder falls, or stones from batt'ring engines break the walls. Swift as a whirlwind, from an arm so strong the lance drove on, and bore the death along. Not could his sevenfold shield the prince avail, nor aught beneath his arms the coat of mail. It pierc'd thro' all, and with a grisly wound transfix'd his thigh, and doubled him to ground. With groans the Latins rend the vaulted sky, woods, hills, and valleys to the voice reply. Now low on earth the lofty chief is laid, and with eyes cast upward, and with arms display'd, and recreant thus to the proud victor pray'd: I know my death deserv'd, nor hope to live. Use what the gods and thy good fortune give. Yet think, O think, if mercy may be shown. Thou hadst a father once, and hast a son. Pity my sire, now sinking to the grave, and for Anchises' sake old Daunus save. Or if thy vow'd revenge pursue my death, give to my friends my body void of breath. The Latian chiefs have seen me beg my life. Thine is the conquest, thine the royal wife. Against a yielded man 'tis mean ignoble strife. In deep suspense the Trojans seem'd to stand, and, just prepar'd to strike, repress'd his hand. He roll'd his eyes, and every moment felt his manly soul with more compassion melt, when casting down a casual glance he spied the golden belt that glitter'd on his side, the fatal spoils which haughty Turnus tore from dying Pallas, and in triumph wore. Then, rous'd anew to wrath, he loudly cries. Flames, while he spoke, came flashing from his eyes. Traitor! dost thou to grace pretend, clad as thou art in trophies of my friend? To his sad soul a grateful offering go. 'Tis Pallas gives this deadly blow. He rais'd his arm aloft, and at the word, deep in his bosom drove the shining sword. The streaming blood distain'd his arms around, and the disdainful soul came rushing through the wound. End of Book 12. End of the Aeneid, by Virgil, translated by John Dryden. Recording by David Lipa, San Francisco, California.